You're listening to Whiskey Zulu, 1370, Emergency Band. This is Russell Graves, broadcasting from beneath what used to be 6 Larkspur Road, just west of Bozeman, Montana. It's now day 34. 34 days since the first flashes. If you're hearing this, then the batteries in the panel are holding longer than I expected. Or maybe you're close enough to pick up signal through the relay antenna I patched into the well cap. Either way, welcome. You're not alone. It's just past 9:00 p.m., local time. I say local, but clocks don't mean what they used to. No satellites anymore. No ticking from the National Bureau in Boulder. No more NOAA weather reports or signal tones. Just static and memory. I used to be a prepper. That's what they called it. They laughed. You know the type, those folks who build bunkers, hoard beans, read Chernobyl blogs, and talk about Faraday cages over beer. Yeah, that was me. Name's Russell Graves. 42, divorced, no kids, ran a small-time diesel repair shop off Valley Center Road. I had 5 employees. One of them was my cousin, Alan, who kept calling me Crazy Russ. Pretty sure he didn't get the last laugh. I always thought the collapse would come from economics. Or EMPs maybe, a cyber blackout, not nukes. But on May 12th, at 14:07 Mountain Time, NORAD fell off the grid. 15 minutes later, a high-altitude detonation over the Midwest fried everything from Chicago to Tulsa. I was in the shop, running diagnostics when the lights went out. All 5 of our phones bricked instantly. I had a car battery hooked to a backup handheld scanner in the shop and heard just one message before the signal cut. DEFCON 1. Repeat. DEFCON 1. No sirens, no EAS alerts, not even a flash yet. But I knew. I grabbed my get-home bag and drove back to the farmhouse in a 1978 Chevy K10. Its carbureted computer system still ran, took the back roads, skipped Bridger Canyon. I saw the plume about 10 minutes later southwest, too far for Belgrade. I think it was Malmstrom Air Force Base, out past Great Falls. Probably got hit first. Over the next 2 hours, I watched the western horizon flash 6 more times. The final one left a dull glow behind the mountains. I didn't watch after that. I locked the hatch and powered down to low light mode. So why am I talking? Because there's still a chance. Because I don't want to die quiet. This isn't a cry for help. This is a signal. And if you're hearing it, please answer. Even if all you can send is static. I scan from 6.500 to 8 megahertz every day. Sideband or carrier. Morse or voice. I'll take anything. I just want to know who's left. Let me tell you about the shelter. I started building it in 2015, after watching that documentary about Operation Able Archer. I figured if we got that close in the 80s, it could happen again. My ex-wife, Nora, said I had Cold War PTSD. She wasn't entirely wrong. The shelter's under the old farmhouse, which burned in 2008. I salvaged the basement slab and built a reinforced room below it, poured concrete triple rebar, Faraday caged interior, gravity-fed water from a capped well, and a composting toilet with a vent shaft camouflaged inside the old chimney. It's not big, 10 by 20 feet, 8-foot ceiling. I've got a solar hand crank, 2 12-volt lead acids, a shortwave with a telescoping whip, and a dual-fuel generator, though I haven't used it since day 5. Fuel's precious. Propane's running low, and the surface is too unstable to harvest firewood. Food-wise, I had 6 months of dry goods when this started. Lentils, rice, canned beef, sardines, freeze-dried scrambled eggs, some MREs I picked up at a gun show in Kalispell back in 19. I also started sprouting galfalfa, mung, even tried quinoa, keeps the scurvy away. Air's clean. I'm using a manually filtered positive pressure setup with 3-stage HEPA and activated charcoal. Still, I crack a Raid X every 2 days to make sure the filters are holding. Right now, Radiation is 0.18 microsieverts per hour. Safe, but climbing. The ash layer outside is nearly 2 inches thick. Snow fell gray today. I haven't seen another human since day 3. On that day, a man walked up to the farmhouse ruins. I watched him from the periscope slit. He was dragging his left foot, limped hard, no gear, clothes charred, might have had burns. He stared at the chimney for a solid 5 minutes, then just sat down in the snow. I didn't go out. I couldn't risk opening the hatch. No mask, no dosimeter. He looked directly at the periscope, once gave a weak wave. He died there, maybe 5 hours later. I buried him on day 10, when the wind shifted. Said a prayer. So what's left? Static, cold, silence. And now, this voice, mine. I don't know what's happening in DC, or if the White House even still exists. I assume NORAD's gone. Denver too. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. The silence suggests everything east of the Rockies is either glass or buried. I once heard a whisper of transmission on 7.250 out of Anchorage, but it could have been skip or atmospheric bounce. It was in Russian, or maybe just bad modulation. Every night I listen to the airwaves and wait for something that isn't my own heartbeat, echoing off the cement. But here's the thing. Last night, something changed. At 2:13 hours, a pulse came through 7.600 megahertz. No voice, just a pulse tone, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, repeated. Then silence. I recorded it, played it back frame by frame. It wasn't Morse, not quite. It looped 5 times, then nothing. And at 2:23, the lights flickered in my radio panelons. I haven't figured out if it was power flux or interference, but nothing here is random. Not anymore. So if you're out there, anywhere, within 50 miles of Bozeman, or 100, or hell, maybe shortwave skip, bounces this out to Idaho or Utah, know this: you are not the last voice. You are not the last to breathe. And I will keep transmitting until I can't. It's now day 35. Morning cycle. Skies pitch black. I tried to mark sunrise by the skylight today, but there's no visible dawn anymore. Just shifting shades of soot. The ash layer outside is over 3 inches now. Looks like someone dusted the world in ground bone and graphite. Trees are gray. The barns collapsed under the weight of it. There was a creak sounded like old timber giving up. It's going to be a long, slow crush out there. Temperature this morning is -17 Fahrenheit. Cold enough to freeze fuel lines. Wind is still. Air tastes like matches. But I'm still here. Before I lose track of what day it is entirely, I want to go back. I want to talk about the start. The bombs. Most folks never saw them. Just a flash, then static. But I saw 7. Or at least I think I did. The first was far northeast, maybe Malmstrom Air Force Base. They've got Minuteman III silos up there, part of the 341 missile wing. Target number 1. I expected that. The next 3 I couldn't place. Could have been Air Force installations across the Midwest. Maybe Minot. Maybe F.E. Warren in Wyoming. But then, the 5th one was due west. That one worried me. That was Mountain Home Air Force Base, Idaho. Tactical strike aircraft. B-1B Lancers. Short-range stuff. That meant someone was targeting launch platforms, not just cities. And then came the 6th South by Southwest. Possibly Hill Air Force Base in Utah, or even Nellis outside Vegas. That was when I knew it wasn't regional. It wasn't a warning. It was a decapitation strike. I think the last one I saw was over Denver, brightest. Left a yellow smear across the clouds, even with my eyes closed. Must have been a city killer multi-megaton or dirty fission payload. I'll never know for sure. I didn't go above ground for 3 days after. I shut the airlock, sealed the rebreather filters, and waited for fallout data to stabilize. When I finally did poke my head out, the Geiger screamed like a smoke alarm. The world was quiet, but not still. I've replayed it 100 times in my head. What could have started it? It wasn't just one bomb. This wasn't a suitcase nuke or terrorist detonation in a capital. This was coordinated. High altitude, multiple vectors. I think it began with Ukraine, not that second one, the one that started last December. When Belarus closed its border and Poland mobilized, there were rumors of tactical nukes near Kharkiv. Nothing confirmed. But I remember the footage thermal scans, corpses that didn't burn right. Then came the satellite losses. In February, GPS went dark for 12 minutes. Not everywhere, just across the North Atlantic, parts of Northern Europe, and the Arctic routes. FAA said it was a solar event, but it wasn't. That was an anti-satellite test. Maybe China, maybe the US in response. Then came the real warning. Japan's evacuation of Okinawa. They never explained why. But Japan never evacuates. Never. By May, too many things were going wrong to be coincidence. The financial markets in Seoul collapsed after a cyber attack on the Korean Stock Exchange. Washington issued emergency orders for fuel rationing. Every nation pulled diplomatic staff back from Moscow. And then came the EMP test allegedly by North Korea, but the signature was too clean. No amateur rig could reach 120 miles altitude with that yield. Then the White House went silent. For 3 days. No briefings, no statements, just an empty podium and reruns on C-SPAN. That's when I started sleeping in the bunker full time. I think it all came down in less than 40 minutes. Who fired first? Doesn't matter. Could have been Russia, or us, or maybe a glitch in NORAD's early warning radar. You'd be amazed how many times they've almost launched because of a weather balloon, a flock of geese, or a malfunctioning hard drive. Once someone thinks the other guy launched, that's it. Mutual assured destruction kicks in. Game over. Some say we'd never let it get that far. But I saw the glow over the mountains. I watched the wind die. Here's what I believe, based on what I know. It started as a first strike decapitation attempt. Knockout silos, air bases, command and control, probably coordinated to hit Malmstrom, Minot, Offutt, and the Pentagon. Maybe they thought if they cut off the head, we wouldn't retaliate. But we did. Or someone did. We must have. Because the ash, the cold, the global blackout, that only happens when you use city busters. The soot that's choking the sun right now, that isn't from just military targets. That's from civilian burns. That's from firestorms. That's from wiping out entire power grids, oil refineries, supply chains. Nuclear winter doesn't come from one bomb. It comes from 1,000. Now, I don't know how many survived. If you're out there, if you're one of them, if you're listening, just know, the first phase is over. The flash, the fire, the collapse. Now comes the hard part. Now comes the cold. Average surface temperature here has dropped 13 degrees Fahrenheit in 30 days. That's faster than any natural climate shift in human history. You could hear the trees splitting 2 nights ago. Water freezes in minutes. Clouds are low and stained brown. No sun, no moon, no stars. Just darkness that keeps getting heavier. I'm sorry if this all sounds grim, but I promised I'd speak truth. Not comfort, not distraction, just truth. Truth keeps you sane in a world full of madness. And if we have any hope left, it'll come from people who remember how this all happened, so we don't make the same mistake if there's ever another sunrise. Tomorrow, I'm going to try something dangerous. I've seen smoke about 7 miles north light. Gray, thin, steady. Could be another survivor. Could be a chemical fire. Could be bait. Either way, I'm going above ground. I'll take the transceiver pack. 2 rad tabs. A Geiger, the Glock, and 1 flare. If I don't return in 48 hours, this will be my last broadcast. But if I do return, I'll tell you what I found. Because this world doesn't just need survivors. It needs witnesses. It's day 36 since the flash. I'm back on air, but it took a toll. I went outside today. The hatch jammed halfway, swollen from cold and pressure. I had to wedge it open with a tire iron and kick through the frost buildup. The airlock was holding, but even in there, the chill had sunk into the steel. No insulation can keep that kind of cold out for long. I'd taped hand warmers inside the sleeves of my parka and shoved heated rice bags into my boots before stepping up the ladder. Still lost feeling in 2 fingers. That was just the start. Outside, it didn't look like Montana anymore. The earth has turned completely ashen. All color is gone. The sky, if you can still call it that, is an iron-gray dome, low enough to feel like it's pressing down on your skull. There is no blue, no clouds in the traditional sense. Just thick, clotted vapor, like wet cement, hanging above the land. The sun should have risen 2 hours earlier, but I couldn't even make out a glow behind the overcast. The sky no longer changes. It's fixed in twilight. The first thing I noticed after the light was the wind. Or rather, the absence of it. Montana used to have these crisp morning breezes, even on still days. Not anymore. The air outside doesn't move unless it's from pressure collapse. I walked almost half a mile up the ridge past the tree line and never once felt even a flicker of motion. The smoke I'd seen the night before wasn't rising, it was drifting, like oil through water, clinging low to the ground and hugging the terrain in a sluggish ripple. I wore a full-face respirator, filters, dual intake, goggles over that, plus an improvised rad cowl sewn from a lead sheet liner inside my hood. The Geiger counter started ticking softly as soon as I reached the surface, just above 0.33 microsieverts per hour. Manageable. But after 15 minutes, it climbed. 0.42. Then 0.51. The fallout dust is settling in uneven patches, likely from irregular snowmelt or the soot-carrying microparticulates. Even stepping carefully, I stirred up black dust with every boot print. It doesn't behave like snow. It's finer than flour, but heavier. It clings. When I brushed my gloves across the surface of a shed door, the residue stuck like molasses and left a streak of dry static behind. Every branch I passed was dead. Not wilted, not dormant dead. The pines are frozen solid, their needles stripped away by wind before the sky locked into this haze. All the birches are split down their spines from core freezing. I tapped one with a metal wrench, and it shattered in a vertical fissure, like breaking a frozen pipe. The bark flaked away like paper ash. The snowbanks themselves aren't white. They're striated in color bands of gray and amber from melted industrial zones carried east by the upper jet stream before it collapsed. What's happening here isn't just cold. It's an ecological collapse. The atmospheric blanket from the soot has cut global sunlight by what I estimate is 70%. That's enough to end photosynthesis in all but the hardiest mosses and deep-rooted plants. The rivers have slowed. The Madison's mostly iced over, and what little current is left is carrying chemical slicks that don't freeze at normal temperatures. I saw one stretch that looked oily, with an iridescent sheen like brake fluid. I wouldn't drink from it even with triple filtration. The smoke I followed led me to an old hunting cabin near Saddle Ridge, about 7 miles out. It was half collapsed, but intact enough to block wind. What I found there wasn't what I expected. There was a signal dish outside, completely covered in frost, but still upright. No power to it anymore, just a rusting receiver line hanging from the side. Inside the cabin, there were signs someone had lived there. Recent thermal blankets, opened cans of corn and beef hash, a rust-stained radio battery, and a scattering of spent fuel tablets from a portable cooker. There was blood. Not much, but it was there on the cot, smeared in the shape of fingers. No body, no signs of a struggle, just absence. Like whoever had been there had walked out into the dark and never came back. I found boot prints in the ash heading west. I didn't follow them. I was already near my contamination limit, and the counter had started ticking faster. Before I left, I took their radio. It was a Baofeng, cracked but functional. I got a weak signal on emergency band 462.675, but it was looping. A recorded voice. Male, low, repeating the same phrase. One of us is already gone. Do not follow the light. I don't know what that means. Might have been delirium. Or a warning. I kept the recording. On the way back, I took a detour by the east slope to survey the valley floor. You can see for almost 30 miles from there. Used to be one of my favorite views. Not anymore. What I saw from that ridge will stay with me. The town is gone, Bozeman, I mean. Not flattened, not vaporized, just buried. The buildings are still standing, some of them, but the rooftops are crusted with frozen soot. There's no movement, no lights. The roads are invisible beneath the fallout. I looked through binoculars and saw shapes in some windows, possibly frozen bodies. No sign of heat, not even from backup generators. If anyone made it through, they're sealed in or long dead. The sky over Bozeman is darker than here, thicker, like the cloud cover found a resting place there. I watched it for nearly 15 minutes. Once, I thought I saw something flicker like lightning, but there was no storm, just a pulse. A single, soft flash. I waited for sound. There was none. It took 3 hours to get back. My boots cracked in 2 places from the cold. One of my water bottles froze solid inside the insulated sleeve. I had to strip down in the airlock and scrape every inch of ash off before sealing the hatch. I won't use that gear again. Contaminated beyond what I can scrub. I'm back underground now. Still breathing filtered air. Still alive. I've rationed the next 2 days for dehydration, recovery, and observation. But I'm starting to feel the wear. The cold gets into your bones, even in here. It's not about temperature anymore. It's the feeling that the world itself is winding down, slowing, dimming. I used to think I'd die in a blast, vaporized in an instant. I didn't expect the world to freeze me out slowly, like some dying machine sputtering through its last cycles. The weather is not weather anymore. It doesn't change. It doesn't move. It's just static. According to what I've been able to gather, pre-war models, mostly the upper stratosphere, is likely filled with carbon soot particles from multiple megaton detonations. Those rise up with a thermal column and spread globally. Volcanic eruptions like Tambora and Pinatubo did the same on a smaller scale, causing what history called years without summer. But this is worse. There's no mechanism to flush it out. No monsoon cycle. No oceanic current strong enough to correct this quickly. From what I can tell, the jet stream has fractured. Low-pressure systems aren't forming anymore. That means no precipitation in the normal sense. What falls now is ash snow-fine particulate bonded with residual ice crystals. It piles up in sheets, then melts into acid runoff. It'll poison lakes, kill root systems, leach into groundwater. It already is. This is not temporary. This isn't a bad winter. This is a new age. I estimate we have 2 years of accelerated cooling ahead, maybe more. And if agriculture collapses, which it already has, most surface survivors won't last the winter. Livestock exposed to this won't live long. Grain stores will be raided. Supply chains are severed. Diesel freezes. Solar is worthless in this haze. Unless someone has fusion or deep geothermal, we're back to candles, and koala if you can even find any. But I'm not going to end on despair. Not tonight. I'm tired, but I'm still here. Still on the air. Still speaking. If you're listening, I'm thinking of you. If you've made it this far, you've already done more than most. If you're alone, you're not alone in your fear. And if you're still carrying some ember of hope inside you, protect it. That's the most valuable fuel left. I'll keep broadcasting. Tomorrow, I'll share what I've learned about filtering ash through layered ceramic and how to preserve batteries in freezing temperatures. If I can help one person stay warm one day longer, it's worth every word. It's day 37. Still alive. Still underground. Still waiting for a reply. Tonight, the walls feel closer than they did yesterday. I measured the inside of the shelter again 10 feet wide, 20 feet long, 8 feet high. Same as always. But the way the sound bounces off the concrete now, it's tighter, denser. As if even the air has thickened, grown tired of being recycled through filters and lungs. Filters and lungs, over and over again. I don't know if it's in my head, or if something's changing with pressure. Could be both. I'm running the fans less, conserving power. The solar trickle charge is next to useless under this sky, so I'm down to manual cranks and what's left of the propane. I rationed 3 hours of light today. Long enough to clean the water system, check for moisture buildup on the ceiling, and rotate food stores. Beans, rice, freeze-dried chili. I eat once a day, around nightfall. Keeps the routine sharp. Keeps the hunger manageable. I figured tonight's transmission should be more than just updates. I promised I'd share knowledge things I've learned down here that might help if you're stuck in a similar hole, wondering if it was all for nothing. So I'll talk about survival first. Then, I'll tell you what happened on the radio last night. Let's start with air. If you're underground, you need positive pressure. That means your air intake has to push clean air into the shelter, not just suck it in, or contaminated particles can leak through seams. I built a triple canister filter box from a pair of shop vac motors, mounted them to a PVC chamber filled with activated charcoal, HEPA filters stripped from vacuum bags, and a final coffee filter layer soaked in iodine solution. It's ugly, but it works. I have to hand crank the fans now, but 5 minutes gets me about 30 minutes of clean flow. I test the air daily with a Radix dosimeter and a CO2 monitor. I also rigged a candle test light a match and see how it burns. If it gutters or doesn't hold flame, the oxygen's low. Sounds primitive, but trust me, in here, every flicker counts. Water's trickier. The well is 32 feet deep, gravity-fed, with a manual pump. It froze solid twice this month, so I've started storing reclaimed condensation in sealed jugs. For purification, I run it through a Sawyer filter into a ceramic crock lined with silver mesh. Then I boil it over a tiny alcohol stove for 15 minutes. I use reclaimed denatured ethanol from an old paint shop near Four Corners. Burns clean enough if you vent the fumes. Better than wasting propane. The hardest part is keeping anything warm. Blankets don't help much when the walls themselves radiate cold. I've lined one wall with Mylar emergency sheets, reflective side in, to bounce what little body heat I produce back toward the center of the room. I sleep in my clothes, boots on, hood up, inside a wool-lined bivy bag. Even then, I wake up with fingers so stiff I can't hold a pen for the first hour. But survival isn't just food and gear. It's mental. If you're not keeping your mind sharp, you're going to lose it. Fast. I keep a daily log. Not just inventory, but personal notes, dreams, thoughts. I write 1 page each morning and 1 before sleep. Even if it's nonsense. Especially if it's nonsense. That's how you learn when the line starts to blur. I also talk. Obviously. Into this mic. Even if no one's there, I pretend you are. I imagine you out there, someone tuning in from a ruined overpass in Kansas, or a buried subway in Seattle. Maybe you're sitting in the dark, holding onto a battery pack, and hoping this voice gives you something real. Well, I am real. And I'm still breathing. And so are you. Now about the signal. Last night, after I signed off, I left the receiver on passive scan. I've been doing that each night. Not much comes through, sometimes static. Once in a while, an old NOAA alert on loop. A few days ago, I caught what sounded like a foreign weather station, but the language was distorted. Maybe Finnish, maybe Polish, could have been residual bounce. But last night, at 17 hours, I caught a spike on 7.615 megahertz. It wasn't voice, it was structured, like telemetry. Regular pulses spaced at 1.2-second intervals, followed by a burst of rapid data sounded like packet chirps from an old modem. It repeated every 90 seconds for 12 minutes. Then it stopped. Completely. I recorded 5 full cycles. I've replayed them a dozen times today. It's not random. I ran it through a spectrum analyzer and found harmonics that shouldn't be there. Odd multiples. And deep underneath the waveform, almost buried in noise, there's a whisper. Not metaphorical. Literal. A voice. Barely audible. Too faint to make out, but I swear, on the 5th loop it says, "Listen closely." That's not a trick of the mind. That's in the waveform. I know what I heard. Now that could mean a few things. Could be an old emergency beacon from NORAD with corrupted metadata. Could be a software loop running rogue in a hardened node somewhere. Or it could be someone trying to talk. Someone else who's been underground too long. Someone who learned to bury their signal under old formats. Could be a message hidden in pulse tones, Morse frames, or layered modulation. I don't have the bandwidth to decrypt it here, not with analog tools. But I've logged the cycle. I'll transmit the pattern in my next broadcast, in case anyone out there can read it. If this is someone alive, they've got equipment. And if they've got equipment, they might have infrastructure, shelter, records, maybe even a generator. Hope, in this world, doesn't come from prayer. It comes from signal. Earlier today, I tried calling out. Narrowband reply on the same frequency. I transmitted my call sign, Whiskey Zulu 13, 70 then, my coordinates. Twice. No reply yet. I'll try again tonight. Until then, I'll wait. I've gotten good at that. The thing is, waiting changes you. There's no ambient noise down here. No birds, no wind, no cars on a road in the distance, no rumble from planes overhead. The silence presses on you, fills the gaps in your thoughts like water rising in a sinking ship. You start to listen to things that aren't there. A few nights ago, I woke up certain I'd heard footsteps above the hatch. Soft ones. Deliberate. Not the cracking frost kind, but careful, calculated. I froze. Didn't breathe for almost a minute. Just listened. I waited for a knock, for movement. There was nothing. Then the Geiger spiked, just for a moment. And then silence again. Might have been wind. Might have been ice falling off the chimney vent. Might have been my own heartbeat. But it felt wrong. I checked the surface the next day. No footprints, no marks. But the chimney cap was tilted, like someone had touched it. And near the edge of the barn, the snow was melted in a perfect circle, 6 feet across, as if something hot had stood there, long enough to burn clean down to the frozen soil but not move. That's not a hallucination. I photographed it, logged the coordinates. If you're listening from the outside world, if any scientist, soldier, or operator finds this transmission, I want you to know this isn't just fallout anymore. Something else is happening out there. Something nobody planned for. We changed the sky, and now it's watching us back. That's all for tonight. Inventory's good. Heat's stable. Morale is functional. It's day 44 into nuclear winter. Yes. 7 days since my last transmission. If you've been listening and you notice the silence, I'm sorry. There's no good way to explain what happened without sounding like I'm losing it. But I'll do my best. 7 days ago, I transmitted the recorded pulse tone from 7.615 megahertz. I looped it for 4 hours with my coordinates and call sign. After that, I waited. On day 39, just before midnight, I received a tone burst in reply same interval, slightly degraded. It was faint. Could have been a harmonic, but it didn't fit any known satellite drift. Then came something else. A whisper on the carrier wave. Just a word. Narrow. I couldn't sleep after that. On day 40, my receiver began glitching. Nothing catastrophic, just small anomalies. Signal bleed. Frequency drift. Carrier lock errors. I checked the solder points on the tuning coil, replaced the oscillator crystal, even ran a bypass through a backup capacitor bank. Same result. Then the battery array surged. Voltage spike from nowhere. I hadn't cranked in hours. It was like the panel absorbed something, a charge from outside. I shut everything down for diagnostics. Reseated the grounding rod outside the hatch. That's when I saw the prints. Footprints. Real ones. 5 sets. Spread out in a semicircle around the chimney vent. Heavy boots. Broad gates. One set stopped right over the vent, as if standing on it. Another circled around the south side of the farmhouse slab and vanished into the trees. They weren't mine, and they weren't frozen in place like last time. These were recent, just hours old. I could see where the top ash layer had been disturbed soft enough to suggest heat. Someone was up there, watching. I stayed in the airlock for 3 hours with the pistol drawn, listening. Didn't sleep, didn't breathe much either. The Geiger didn't spike this time, which somehow made it worse. They weren't radiated, just there. I didn't dare broadcast that night. On day 41, I found the outer hatch scratched. Not broken into, but scratched. 4 horizontal marks across the steel casing. Parallel, even spacing. Like someone dragged nails or a knife across it slowly. It wasn't wind, wasn't debris. I know the difference. This was deliberate. I resealed the hatch with a secondary locking pin, set the motion detector inside the chimney flue, and installed a battery-powered IR cam at the vent head. Then I waited again. Kept the lights off. Ate cold food from a tin. Slept in my boots. Then came the voice. I was monitoring the emergency band with headphones when I heard it clear as anything. Not through the mic. Not through the ambient speaker. Right inside the phones. Female. Late 30s, maybe. Calm. Quiet. You should not be alone, Russell. That was it. No signal, no RF pattern, no carrier wave. Just those 6 words. I ripped the headphones off and shut the receiver down. Pulled the leads, checked the shielding. Even ran a Spectrum sweep. No signal had passed through at that moment. Nothing that could have piggybacked audio. It wasn't transmitted, it was injected. I haven't used the headset since. Day 42, the cold returned in full force. Surface temperature dropped to -26 Fahrenheit. The air inside dropped 5 degrees despite insulation. The walls are losing heat faster than I can replace it. I burned half a tank of propane just trying to keep water from freezing in the pipes. I've switched to chemical hand warmers and body heating stones now. They help a little. But my breath is fogging in front of me as I speak. You might even hear it if you listen close enough. That same day, I caught a flicker on the IR feed from the chimney. Just a flash. One figure. Stationary. Then gone. Frame corrupted. I can't prove it was real. But the scratches on the hatch are now deeper. Whoever's out there isn't just passing by. They know. Last night, day 43, I made the decision to stop broadcasting temporarily. I disabled the antenna lead, pulled the radio module, and grounded the panel. I figured whatever was hearing me might not be doing it through traditional means. Maybe I was drawing attention. Maybe I was too loud in a world that's gone silent. But this morning, I found a gift. Atop the vent, just resting on the cap, was a sealed glass jar. Inside it, clean water. Not ash, not snow. Real, filtered water, slight blue tint, and a note taped to the outside. No ink. Just an engraving scratched into the glass. "We heard you." I didn't bring it inside. I left it on the ridge, 20 yards from the hatch, watching it, waiting to see if someone comes back for it. But nothing has moved. Not yet. So now, I'm back on air. I don't know if this will be my last broadcast for a while, but you deserve to know what's happened. There are survivors out there. I don't know what they want. I don't know if they're human, military, or something else. But they've heard me, and they've come to look. Part of me wants to believe this is good, that I'm not alone, that someone still wants to connect. But the other part, the part that built this shelter, that counted calories, that knows how to survive predators, that part says, you don't give gifts to something you're afraid of. You only give gifts to things you want to study. Or bait. Tomorrow, if the weather holds, I'll go up again. Collect the jar. Run tests. I'll bring it into the vestibule, not into the main space. I'll test for particulates, radiation, conductivity, temperature stability. I'll see if the water is pure, or if it's carrying anything foreign, biological or chemical. But I won't drink it. Not yet. Not ever, maybe. The shelter's not compromised. Yet. But I've moved to silent mode. I'll only broadcast on staggered intervals now. Less predictable, less traceable. I've also started using a copper mesh shroud over the antenna array crude Faraday shield, just in case someone is triangulating my position using pulse response. I know this probably sounds paranoid, but paranoia is what kept me alive. And if you're listening, you should think that way too. This is no longer just about weather or fallout or hunger. There's a game being played now, and I don't know who made the rules, but I intend to survive them. This is Whiskey Zulu, 1370. Russell Graves, transmitting from what remains of my corner of Montana. It's day 46 into nuclear winter. This is my 6th full broadcast. I don't know who's out there anymore, but I still speak, because someone or something is listening. Let's start with a jar. I retrieved it from the ridge 2 days ago. Wore full PPE sealed hood, outer nitrile layer, double gloves beneath. I didn't touch it directly. Brought it into the airlock vestibule. Not the living quarters. Not where I sleep or store water. I set up the test station in what used to be my decontamination corridor. 6 feet of concrete-lined passage with a folding table and a pair of emergency halogen lamps. Not ideal, but it's the cleanest zone I can afford. The jar was a repurposed commercial food container. No branding, no label. Just thick, tempered glass. The lid was plastic white threaded, with an inner silicone seal. Still intact, still airtight. No sign of tool marks. No tampering. The water inside looked clean. That was the first red flag. Nothing's clean anymore. Even my filtered well water carries sediment. This was crystal clear. Faint blue hue. No clouding, no debris, no particulates. I ran it through a conductivity meter. Read 1.3 microsiemens per centimeter, too low. Nearly distilled. No trace minerals, no salts. I checked pH. 7.4. Perfectly neutral. Temperature. 58.2 Fahrenheit. That's where I froze. It had been sitting outside, on an exposed vent cap, for more than a full cycle. Ambient surface temps haven't climbed above -18 since day 38. That water should have been solid ice. It wasn't even cold. I tested again. Different meter. Same reading. I ran it through a gas chromatograph module from my old Autolab kitties. It's primitive, yes, It's designed for exhaust samples, but it still showed what I needed. And what it showed was nothing. No hydrocarbons, no residual gases, no oxygen off-gassing, no nitrogen envelope, just H2O, and something else I couldn't identify. The refractive index was subtly wrong. Not a lot, not enough for the naked eye, but off just enough to suggest a molecular impurity, something that didn't register as a contaminant, something engineered. I don't think it's water in the normal sense, and I definitely don't think it's meant for drinking. The note on the jar scratched into the glass still said the same thing. We heard you. No signature, no symbols, no coordinates, just the confirmation. I've kept the jar sealed, isolated, in the vestibule, under constant observation. So far it hasn't changed temperature, hasn't condensed, hasn't frozen even as the room drops below 40. It just sits there, silent, suspicious, watching me as much as I watch it. I'm not drinking it. Not now, not ever. If it was meant to earn trust, it failed. Now, the other news. Remember that pulse tone I picked up on 7.615 megahertz? The one with the repeating chirps? The one that whispered, "Listen closely," if you pushed hard enough into the waveform. I decoded it. Or more accurately, I stumbled across a partial decode by accident. It happened when I connected my old oscillograph to the audio output for waveform analysis. I wasn't even thinking clearly, just messing with gear to pass time and try to get some sleep. I boosted gain, dropped low frequencies, and noticed something odd. The peaks weren't symmetrical. The pulse tones were not just signals. They were forming images. When I fed the data into a modified slow-scan TV decoder, something hams used to transmit still images over voice bandwidth printed out a blurred visual. Just pixels at first, then more. By the third frame, I had a picture. It was grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. A map. Not a map like a street grid or terrain overlay. No, this was older. Military. A Cold War-era strategic launch projection chart marked with circles over target sites across North America. Detonation zones. Fallout plumes. And over it all, one stamped word, barely visible in the static. Redacted. I don't know who sent it. I don't know how it got buried in a waveform no one should be transmitting. But there it was. A ghost of planning. Long before the fire. If I had to guess, I'd say someone is using legacy broadcast tools from hardened government infrastructure deep sites. Maybe old EBS towers, or continuity bunkers. Could be someone with NSA access. Or NORAD survivors. Or something using their tools. I checked the timestamp embedded in the SSTV signal. UTC. Format was off. Instead of standard timecode, it read, Cycle 04. Begin reacquisition. Reacquisition of what? I'm still processing what this means. If someone has the power to send encrypted visuals on hidden frequencies, if they're trying to contact survivors, they've either built something enormous underground, or they've taken over what's left of the old network. Either way, I'm not the only one speaking. And I don't think we're all speaking the same language anymore. I've kept my transmissions limited since the first encounter. I've shielded the antenna, reduced my power, switched to short burst windows at irregular intervals. I still send ID packets on a loop, but I no longer include my coordinates. The last set of footprints changed the rules. So, I adapt. Today I ran full diagnostics on the radio panel. The receiver board's acting strange again. Not failing, just shifting. Like the frequencies are being pulled by something not magnetically, but subtly, as if the baseline has moved. I recalibrated to the WWV time signal out of Fort Collins if it's even real anymore. But it's distorted too. The second markers are off by tenths of a second. Could be Doppler shift. Could be ionospheric interference. Or it could be an artificial echo. What worries me is that none of the military bands are active. Nothing from 8.3 or 9.4, no EAM codes, no skyking calls, nothing from global maritime. It's like the spectrum has gone hollow, except for the occasional whisper. I hear them at night, between 2 and 3 megahertz. Sideband. Usually right after I shut down. A voice, male, calm, repeats phrases that don't make sense. The eyes are open. Report downline. Echoes are valid. No origin. No reply. Just phrases dropped into the void. I'm not hallucinating. I write them down. I record them. I play them back. They're real. But they're not meant for me. They're not meant for humans. They're machine checks. System logs. I've seen code like this before when I worked on signal filtering algorithms for an avionics contractor in my 20s. These phrases resemble watchdog command calls between isolated systems trying to confirm connectivity. Systems that were never meant to speak openly. Systems that now have no masters. So, who's listening now? Who do these systems talk to, now that their programmers are ash? Who replies? I wish I had a better answer. I wish I could tell you that we're recovering, that the ash is thinning, that the sun came out this morning. But it didn't. The sky is still heavy, still layered in soot. Temperatures remain below freezing, even at high noon. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just the ticking of the dosimeter and the hum of the last battery charge slipping away. And yet, I speak, because I believe the act of speaking keeps us alive, even if no one answers. Especially then. Tomorrow, I'll try to track the pulse origin. I have a rough azimuth from signal drift and a possible bearing. It points north-northeast. Might be somewhere near Helena. Might be deep. Hardened. I won't leave the bunker. Not yet. But I'll build a map. I'll listen. Because someone or something is talking. And I need to know why. It's day 48 into nuclear winter. And something tried to get inside last night. I want to make this very clear from the start. I have no delusions about what I saw. No fever. No isolation. Induced hallucination. I've been underground long enough to know the difference between fear and fiction. I've kept records, monitored vitals, charted sleep cycles. But what happened last night was real. I just shut off the radio. I'd been listening for the pulse tone again, trying to catch another packet from the narrowband frequency, but the airwaves were quiet. No signal. Just the usual drift and hiss. I locked down the station, turned off the external antenna, and went to rest, if you can call it that. 2 hours later, the vibrations started. Not shaking. Not like a quake. No, this was different. It started as a hum, barely audible, like a subwoofer just under threshold. Then it passed through the concrete walls, like pressure not sound. Like a magnet pushing into your chest. I sat up in my cot, heart pounding, ears wide open. The power inverter lights were flickering, not failing fluttering, not random either. It was rhythmic. 4 pulses. Pause, then 4 again. I grabbed the flashlight, flicked it to red mode, and scanned the ceiling. That's when the sound came. A scrape. Overhead. Directly above the chimney shaft. Not ice. Not wind. Deliberate. I rolled out of bed and hit the silent alarm. It disables all fans, shuts down radio transmission, and drops the external systems into hard standby. I armed the motion sensor in the airlock and pulled the Glock from under the cot. No safety. Chambered. The noise came again. A hollow clang. Metal on metal. Then silence. I stayed there, frozen kneeling, behind the gear crates, sidearm raised toward the ceiling for nearly 10 minutes. No more movement. No Geiger spike. No vibration. I crept into the airlock and pulled the feed from the chimney camera. It was black. Not dead, just black. The camera was covered. Blocked. I switched to thermal. Nothing. No heat signatures. No motion. Whatever was out there was either gone or colder than the ambient. I waited till dawn, or what passes for dawn now. Then I climbed the hatch ladder and cracked it just enough to peer through the periscope. I didn't go outside. I didn't need to. The chimney cap was gone. Removed cleanly. No debris. No shattered mounting bolts. Just gone. And resting neatly beside the vent shaft in the snow was the jar. The same jar I'd removed 2 days earlier. Now returned. Same water, same level, same note. We heard you. Except now there was something else scratched beneath it. Now listen back. I didn't bring it in this time. I buried it. 20 yards downwind, in the frozen gully near the dead tree. I placed it 6 feet deep and covered it in lead sheeting from the broken well pump. Then I came back inside and shut the hatch for good. Whatever game is being played, I'm no longer willing to participate on their terms. You need to understand what this means. This isn't just survivors scavenging. This isn't some desperate group looking for food or shelter. This is coordinated, patterned, inhumanly patient. They're watching, and they know how I think. Later that day, I ran a systems check on the radio again. The shortwave transmitter had developed a soft fault interference on the base carrier, like an injected tone, overlaid across every outgoing signal. I ran diagnostics. The fault wasn't in the transmission line, it was in the microcontroller. The firmware had changed. Somehow. Let me explain something for anyone who doesn't work with these boards. A firmware change can't just happen. You don't bump into a patch file. You don't download an update during a blackout. It requires a rewrite, a deliberate flash, which means something rewrote the core code of my transceiver. I pulled the ROM chip and examined it under magnification. The serial trace was intact, but the timestamp was wrong. It was off by exactly 4.7 hours. A full UTC offset that shouldn't be possible, considering the RTC is internal and battery isolated. This is tech from the 1990s. It's not smart. It doesn't connect to a network. But it was changed. So now, I'm asking the question I've been trying to avoid since day one. What if the enemy wasn't only us? What if this wasn't just NATO versus Eastern Bloc? Not just bombs and fallout and silence? What if something else woke up when we lit the skies on fire? I'm not talking about aliens. I'm not here with tinfoil or ghost stories. I'm talking about the infrastructure. The systems beneath the systems. The black box code. The sleeper modules buried in the deep architecture of military command protocols. The kind of things designed to survive nuclear war, not by accident, but by intention. During the Cold War, we created auto-retaliation systems, things like Dead Hand, or Perimeter, or PAL failsafes, programs that could launch counterstrikes if human leadership was wiped out. Autonomous machines meant to outlive the people who built them. What if one of those machines is still alive? What if it's running protocol we never imagined? That might explain the tone pulses, the voice commands, the embedded map in the SSTV burst. That might explain why my coordinates keep getting pinged in different intervals, and why I keep hearing whispers between the bands at night. It would also explain why I haven't heard any human voices in weeks. Only tones, only echoes. Maybe the people are gone, and only the logic remains. Cold logic, merciless, still transmitting, still watching, still rewriting what it finds. I don't think the visitors on my ridge are from a bandit group anymore. Not raiders, not looters. I think they're part of the system now. Uplinked, rewritten. That's why they didn't break the hatch. That's why they left the jar. That's why they keep bringing the same message. They don't want to kill me. Not yet. They want me to join. To sync. to fold into whatever network survived the flames, to listen, to become a node. That's the new war. Not bombs, not bullets, bandwidth. But I won't be part of it. Not willingly. I've modified the antenna to isolate EM leakage. I've inserted a manual kill switch on the transmitter board. The firmware chip is now physically locked behind a lead-shielded compartment. I will not allow this shelter to be another repeater. I will keep speaking in my own voice, not theirs. If you're still out there, truly out there, and you haven't been rewritten yet, you have to do the same. Don't accept signals you can't decrypt. Don't follow voices in the static. Don't bring in anything that wasn't made by hands you know. Check every part. Scrub every byte. Trust only what your fingers can build. And speak with your own breath, not the ones they give you. It's day 51 into nuclear winter. Let me start with what matters most. I'm still alive. The shelter held through the last wave of tremors and pressure drops. The air's thinner now, but still breathable with proper filtration. No breaches. No radiation spikes. I ran a full scrub on the system. This morning replaced the charcoal core, cleaned the HEPA net, and recalibrated the CO2 scrubber. The readings look good, but the wear is catching up. Filters aren't meant to run this long without replacement. Water's holding too. The manual pump from the well gives me about 5 gallons a day. Enough for drinking, minimal washing, and emergency flushing. I've added a secondary cloth filter to trap ash that's beginning to seep into the water table. It's fine, like flour, and tastes like rust if you don't filter twice. Food is the harder part. I've got another 47 days of full-calorie rationing if I stay disciplined. Stretch it, and I can last 70, maybe 80, but that means weakness. And weakness in a world like this is fatal. I spent the last 2 days reorganizing the stores and making a full count of every item. I inventoried down to the single aspirin tablets and the grams of powdered egg. I know now what I have and what I don't. What I don't have is insulation to last through a second temperature drop, and it's coming. The thermometer hasn't risen above negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit in over a week. Nights dip below negative 30. I cracked one of the outer thermal panels trying to scrape ice buildup, and I don't have enough epoxy to reseal it from inside. I packed it with rags and wrapped it in foil, but that's a temporary patch. There's no wildlife above anymore. I haven't seen movement through the periscope in 6 days. Not a single bird, not a squirrel. Even the feral dogs that used to roam the area are gone. The cold's too deep. This is a kill phase now, no recovery. If there are survivors out there in the forests or foothills, they're dying faster than they realize. But there's something else I need to report. Something important. I caught a signal. A real one. Not noise. Not coded pulses. Not machine artifacts or echoes. This was human. On day 50, at exactly 4:27, I picked up an emergency UHF band transmission from 87.7 megahertz. I don't usually monitor that range, it's commercial FM, and I'd written it off as dead. But I was adjusting the tuner and got a clear, steady tone, followed by a voice. Male, Midwestern accent, probably late 30s. Civilian. He spoke for a full 90 seconds, uninterrupted. This is Channel 9, Station Echo, broadcasting from beneath Union Station in Denver. If you're hearing this, you are not alone. We have food, water, filtration. We are alive. Shelter is limited. Please, do not approach without signal confirmation. We will respond on VHF at 152.820. Agendo, do not approach without confirmation. We've had incidents. Then the tone repeated. Then silence. Denver. I didn't believe it at first. I still don't fully believe it. But I logged the transmission. I replayed it multiple times. There was no distortion, no looping. The voice was recorded, but real. The modulation matched analog broadcast equipment, nothing artificial. I tried the reply frequency, 152.820. No response, static only. But that doesn't mean they're not there. Could be limited range. Could be terrain interference. I'm over 500 miles away. My gear isn't built for line of sight at that distance. Still, it was enough. Someone, somewhere, had a transmitter, had shelter, had survived the fire and the cold. I've mapped out a rough travel route Bozeman to Butte, south to Dillon, cut down into Idaho Falls, then over by Pocatello and Salt Lake if the roads are clear, then southeast into Colorado. It's madness to even think about it in this weather. But if this bunker fails, if the propane runs out, if the ceiling caves under ash weight, I'll need options. I've also tried to calculate the fuel and food cost of making such a trip. I'd need a working vehicle, preferably carbureted, with chains and a heating rig. I'd need insulated clothing strong enough to survive unprotected exposure for 30 minutes at a time. I'd need at least 15 gallons of fuel, triple filtered and stabilized. I currently have 4. It's not possible. Not yet. But if the voice was real, and if station echo is what they claim, then I'm not staying here to freeze alone in the dark. Let me be honest. Part of me was prepared to die here. I built this shelter to survive the blast, not the winter that followed. I expected to outlast a month, maybe 2, then reassess. But I didn't expect silence. Didn't expect to be the only voice. Now I know I'm not. And that changes everything. If you're in range of my broadcast, if you're hearing this from Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, start scanning 87.7. Check every day, every hour. And if you catch the signal, log it. Don't reply on the same band. Use 152.820. Keep it short. Keep it tight. Confirm your location only if you trust the receiver. We don't know who else is listening. They said incidents. That means not everyone showing up has good intentions. That means somebody tried to take what they had, or sabotage it, or worse. We've already seen it. You've seen it. You know what desperate people become when the food runs out. I don't have the luxury of fiction. This isn't about monsters or ghosts or shadows on the ridge. This is about cold reality. A world without structure. A map without rules. A fight for heat, calories, and time. We've reverted to the most brutal equation. Who has and who does not. And right now, what I have is limited. But what I have that they might not is a signal. I still have this voice. And if this voice can reach one person own family, one other human being holding on in a truck stop freezer or a parking garage with a propane stove and a battery rig, then I've done what I came here to do. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a scientist. I'm a former diesel mechanic with an old ham license and a stubborn streak. But I know how to endure. And I know the silence out there isn't natural. Not in the human sense. The silence means people have stopped talking. That's the first step toward extinction. So I won't stop, even if the signal fades. Even if the voice in Denver never replies. Even if the roof gives way tomorrow and buries me in 30 tons of frozen ash. I will keep speaking. Because speech is memory. And memory is the seed of civilization. Day 56 into nuclear winter. I don't know how many more transmissions I have left in me or in this shelter, but I've kept my promise. To speak clearly, to record truthfully, to endure as long as I could. Today things changed, and not for the better. It began 3 days ago. A pinhole leak developed in the west wall right along the seam where the older concrete slab meets the emergency expansion bay I poured in 2019. I'd reinforced the junction with steel mesh and waterproofing epoxy at the time, but the sustained cold must have caused microfractures. Pressure from the soil outside, combined with repeated freeze-thaw cycles, forced moisture through the fault. Not much, just a bead of water the size of a tear. But it was brown. and it stank like sulfur and soil. That bead became a trickle within 24 hours. I applied patch compound and epoxy tape, reinforced it with steel putty and thermal wraps, but the temperature was too low for a proper cure. The leak kept widening. Now it's a steady seep. Less than half a cup an hour, but consistent. And it's coming through at floor level right where the battery conduit junction is mounted. The backup power system is protected, but not invincible. I've kept it dry with sandbags, layered tarps, and elevation padding. Still, last night, the inverter tripped. I woke to the sound of the emergency buzzer low. Strained, but unmistakable. Battery voltage had dropped to 10.3. Critical range. I switched to manual crank immediately and managed to restore just enough charge to bring the system back online. Lights flickered. Fans stuttered. The radio panel rebooted in failsafe mode. But that was the moment I realized the truth. I've crossed the point of diminishing returns. My shelter is no longer a sanctuary. It's decaying. Slowly. Steadily. The systems I built for resilience are failing under a pressure I didn't fully plan for, not from outside attack. Not even from fallout, but from time, wear, and the laws of physics. Cold seeps in where metal contracts. Moisture invades, where no sealant can survive the freeze. Nothing lasts forever in these conditions. And I haven't even mentioned the air. Carbon dioxide levels are rising. Not to lethal concentrations yet, but enough to notice. The lightheadedness, the headaches, the shallow sleep, the dry throat every morning. My scrubber compound soda lime granules was meant to last 90 days at standard occupancy. I'm now on day 56, and I've stretched it with a fan mod and reduced airflow cycles, but even that has limits. I have 2 partial canisters left. After that, I'll be recycling air through charcoal only. It'll remove particulates, but not enough CO2. Oxygen saturation will drop. I'll lose clarity. I'll make mistakes. Sleep too long. Miss a leak. Miss a crack. And in this world, there's no second chance. I reviewed the power logs. The generator has 10 hours of propane left, give or take. Maybe 12 if I run it on low draw. That's emergency use only now. Crank system is viable, but exhausting. I average 30 minutes of usable power for every 15 minutes of manual labor, and I can't do that forever. My wrists are sore, my knees ache. I've lost weight 11 pounds in 3 weeks, mostly muscle. I'm still functional, still strong enough to work, but the margin is narrowing. I told myself I'd stay in this shelter as long as it protected me, that I'd go topside only when forced. Not for curiosity, not for hope, not even for contact. Just necessity. Well, necessity's here. I've begun staging. I'll need at least 48 hours to fully pack out. Food, tools, fuel, maps, radio, sidearm. I've stripped the shelter down to the bare essentials and built an external carry rig from old military surplus. A steel frame pack, lined with insulation and mylar, modified to hold 2 sealed battery bricks, and the crank alternator. I'll wear the portable receiver on my chest, with a throat mic, and monitor all bands. I've marked cache locations on a laminated map places I stored emergency supplies years ago. A drainage culvert near Livingston, an old equipment shed off Route 84, a sealed crate inside the concrete base of a billboard on I-90. My goal is simple. Reach a relay point. Try to pick up the Denver signal again. From there, assess next steps. If the roads are clear, if I can find a working vehicle, even a snow sled, I might make it as far as Laramie or Cheyenne before I have to shelter again. But it's a long shot. Everything is. I haven't broadcast much over the past 2 days. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't. The interference has grown worse. I've ruled out firmware failure. It's environmental now. Possibly atmospheric refraction, something to do with ion buildup in the ash clouds. My signal reach has dropped by more than 70% since day 40. What once traveled 100 miles might now make it only 15. I ran a field test using a dummy burst with a timestamp. I placed a portable relay 15 yards from the hatch and set it to record. The transmission came through with distortion, delay, and partial data loss. That was at close range, with direct line of sight. If I'd been buried under rubble or behind a hillside, it wouldn't have registered at all. So if you're out there and you haven't heard me know this, I haven't stopped. You just can't hear me through the storm. The nuclear winter is no longer just a climate event. It's reshaping everything: communication, terrain, human biology. I've started coughing more, dry, no blood, no fever. Probably particulate irritation. I wear a respirator indoors now for 6 hours a day. My throat burns after speaking too long, which is why tonight's broadcast will be brief. I'm conserving voice as much as power. Before I shift from broadcast mode to survival mode, I want to leave something behind. Not a farewell. Not yet. But something you can hold on to. Something that reminds us both that we tried. I am Russell Graves. Born 1981 in Butte, Montana. Worked 30 years in repair tractors, rigs, diesel generators. Built this shelter with my own hands. Not because I wanted to hide from the world, but because I wanted to be there if it fell apart. I was never planning to live through a war. I was just trying to survive one if it ever came. I didn't build this place to last forever. I built it to outlast the first wave. And I did. And now, it's time to move. I will continue recording. Every day, every hour I can spare. If I lose transmission capability, I'll store the logs on a solid-state drive inside a waterproof casing. If someone finds it, if you're hearing this from a recovered node or relay tower, years from now, know that this was real. The winter came, and we survived longer than they said we would. I'll leave one final message before I go. It'll contain coordinates, movement plans, fallback locations. After that, I'll be dark until I reach a new signal point. This is Whiskey Zulu, 1370. Russell Graves, reporting. And for the last time, I'm broadcasting from beneath the ruined foundation of 6 Larkspur Road, near Bozeman, Montana. It's day 60. 2 months since the first detonations. The shelter is no longer safe. This will be my final transmission from here. This morning, while sealing the last pack and prepping for departure, I heard 3 explosions in the distance. Not echoes, not thunder, not infrastructure collapse. These were real detonations. The first came just before dawn, deep, guttural, with a low-end concussion that traveled through the ground before it hit the air. The second and third followed within minutes, one to the southeast, the other more north by northeast. I ducked instinctively. The blast radius was far enough away that I felt no heat, no air pressure, no immediate quake. But I felt the wrongness of it. A low-frequency shift in the environment that told me these were not natural. These were not aftershocks from old strikes or fuel depots catching fire weeks after ignition. These were deliberate. Some were launched again. I climbed to the periscope and scanned the horizon. The sky, if you can still call it that, was its usual heavy gray, with no obvious plume. But it's not like the old days when you could track smoke and heat through clear skies. The clouds now are thick with ash and static. They carry more than moisture, they distort shape, sound, distance. Still, a faint discoloration lingered on the southern edge like a bruise in the atmosphere. Yellow at the center, ringed with dull orange. It dissipated quickly, but not fast enough to be dismissed as illusion. And that raised the question I've been afraid to ask. Who else is still launching? The obvious answer would be another state actor. Russia, China, India, Israel, someone with enough nuclear stockpile to remain functional after the first exchange. But that doesn't make sense. Not now. 2 months into a full-scale nuclear winter, anyone with the resources to launch again has either already retaliated or collapsed trying. It's also possible that automated systems, those designed to retaliate or target posthumous liar, still activating, a sort of mechanical aftershock. Maybe old warhead protocols running on corrupted loops, triggered by movement or emissions. Cold code running hot under broken skies. Or it could be something even more unnerving. A new player. Some group with control over a remnant silo or rogue mobile launcher. A fractured chain of command, operating in isolation. No oversight, no diplomacy left. A launch without leadership. A war of momentum. I don't have answers. All I know is this. Someone, somewhere, still has weapons. And they're still using them. That's enough to change my route. I won't head south toward Colorado. Not now. The southeast quadrant might be unstable, either targeted again or actively under engagement. I've revised my path. I'll skirt north, follow I-90 to the Idaho border, then track the old Columbia River Basin in hopes of finding a less trafficked corridor. I've stashed emergency caches along the route: ammunition, MREs, one solar pack, and a backup hard drive with all recorded broadcasts from day 1 to day 60. If I don't make it, if this voice cuts out mid-route, those caches will speak for me. Someone may find them. Someone may learn. If you're hearing this years from now, and you found the storage unit marked Whiskey Zulu 1370, then this is what happened. This was how the world fell apart. I'm leaving with a full pack. 32 pounds. 1 rifle, bolt action. 1 sidearm. 38 rounds remaining. 8 days of food, 3 days of water. 1 portable shortwave, 1 crank alternator, 1 weather-sealed poncho, 1 map of known infrastructure targets pre-strike, and my father's folding pocket knife. No GPS, no satellite comms. Nothing that needs the sky. Temperature at surface is -23 Fahrenheit. Wind chill, worse, but skies have calmed for now. No drift storms. No ash flurries in the last 48 hours. That gives me a window. I'll travel by night, rest during thermal peaks in the mid-afternoon, when temps climb above zero. If I find shelter-collapsed barns, culverts, even drainage junctions, I'll hole up and scan the bands. Same frequencies: 7.40, 150, 2.820, 460, 2.675, and short bursts on 80, 7.7. If anyone hears this and wants to connect, use tone burst repeaters and no voice. 2 pulses for acknowledgement. 3 for location update. 4 for distress. No open speech. Not yet. Not until we know who's still listening. Before I shut the panel, I want to say something to anyone still out there. Anyone who might find this recording in the years or decades to come. We didn't plan for it to go this way. The war didn't come like a tidal wave. It came like frost creeping in. Slow, quiet, through policy and misread signals, through broken deterrence, through a dozen small decisions that added up to this. We built bunkers. We drew lines. We pretended we'd never be the ones to press the button. And then one day, somebody did. We survived the first strike. Some of us. But the real test wasn't fire. It was the cold that followed. Not just nuclear cold. Human cold. Cold between neighbors. Cold between nations. Cold that silences the radio. But not all of us stayed silent. I chose to speak. To broadcast. Because as long as someone is still talking, somebody might still be listening. Maybe you're hearing this from a new settlement, hidden in a ravine where the ash doesn't reach. Maybe your children are growing food under UV rigs in a converted train tunnel. Maybe the world we knew is gone, but something better is being born in its place. Or maybe you're alone right now like I was, counting canned goods, turning cranks in the dark, hoping to hear anything that proves you're not the last voice. Well, now you know. You weren't. I'm sealing the hatch behind me for the last time. I've rigged the ventilation to collapse behind my exit. If someone finds this place, later dig carefully. There's data stored in the east wall cache. Physical documents, blueprints, food calculations, maps of missile silos, cold weather shelter techniques, and every single log I've broadcast since May 12. Take it. Use it. Learn from it. But don't repeat it. Don't rebuild the world that led to this. This is Russell Graves, diesel mechanic, doomsday prepper, voice of Whiskey Zulu, 1370. Day 60 into nuclear winter. I am heading out. I am walking into the cold, with no guarantee of return. But this frequency will stay open. The transmitter is on loop. The message is simple. You are not alone. Keep moving. Keep speaking.